In a significant diplomatic development, Ukraine has agreed to a 30-day ceasefire following high-level negotiations in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. However, Russia has not formally committed to the truce. While President Vladimir Putin has acknowledged the proposal, he insists that any agreement must address Russia's security concerns and territorial claims. Meanwhile, military clashes persist in key battlegrounds such as Kursk and Donbas, casting doubt on the ceasefire's viability. As global powers, including the US, China, the EU, and NATO, maneuver behind the scenes, the pressing question remains: is this the beginning of a genuine path to peace, or merely a tactical pause before further conflict? The ceasefire, brokered with US backing, aims to create a window for substantive diplomatic negotiations. Ukrainian officials have expressed cautious optimism but remain firm on key conditions. No territorial concessions. Ukraine insists that any agreement must respect its internationally recognized borders and reject Russian claims over occupied territories. Security guarantees. Kyiv demands concrete assurances from Western allies to prevent future Russian aggression. Continued economic and military support. Ukraine expects uninterrupted financial aid and arms supply during the ceasefire period. President Volodymyr Zelensky underscored Ukraine's position, stating, "This ceasefire demonstrates our willingness to pursue peace, but let it be clear, Ukraine will not compromise on its sovereignty, nor will it accept a settlement that rewards aggression." Despite ongoing diplomatic pressure, Russia has not formally accepted the ceasefire. Kremlin sources indicate skepticism, with some officials viewing the truce as an opportunity for Ukraine to regroup and rearm. Putin has expressed conditional support but insists that key concerns must be addressed before any agreement is finalized. Speaking at a press conference in Moscow, he warned that a ceasefire without security guarantees could allow Ukraine to strengthen its military positions. "We support the idea of a true ceasefire that will bring real results," Putin said. But what happens next? If we stop hostilities for 30 days, what guarantees are there that Ukrainian forces will not use this time to receive more weapons from the West and strengthen their positions? Putin outlined several key conditions that Moscow will require before agreeing to any ceasefire. Ukraine must halt attacks on Russian-controlled territories. Western nations must cease supplying arms to Kyiv during the ceasefire period. Talks should focus on lasting peace framework rather than just a temporary pause. Discussions on sanctions relief must be part of broader negotiations. A Russian diplomat reinforced these concerns. "We see no evidence that Ukraine is serious about negotiations. The West continues to supply arms, and Kyiv refuses to acknowledge the new realities on the ground. This is not a basis for peace, but a pause before another escalation." The US has played a central role in these negotiations, balancing diplomacy with continued military support for Ukraine. Washington had briefly paused certain aid packages to push Kyiv towards talks, but has since resumed intelligence sharing and weapons deliveries. Secretary of State Marco Rubio emphasized the significance of the ceasefire. "We have given Ukraine a chance to negotiate a lasting peace. Now, the responsibility is on Russia. If Moscow rejects this opportunity, it will confirm that they have no interest in diplomacy." While Washington remains hopeful, officials have signaled that they are prepared to escalate support for Ukraine if Russia continues its aggression. Some policymakers have even suggested lifting restrictions on Ukrainian strikes inside Russian territory should Moscow refuse. China has been actively engaged in back-channel diplomacy, leveraging its influence over Moscow while maintaining strategic relations with the West. Chinese diplomats have reportedly held private meetings with both Russian and Ukrainian representatives, urging them towards a negotiated settlement. A high-ranking Chinese official recently met with Russian envoys in Shanghai, a move widely interpreted as an effort to mediate without directly challenging Putin. A Chinese foreign policy expert told the Global Times, "China seeks stability above all. A prolonged war is bad for global trade and bad for Chinese markets. While we maintain a close partnership with Russia, we also recognize that endless conflict is unsustainable." Western diplomats are closely watching China's balancing act, hoping Beijing's influence could push Russia towards compromise. Despite these developments, hostilities persist. In the Kursk region, Ukrainian troops have begun a tactical withdrawal, following heavy Russian artillery bombardments. Moscow claims it is close to reclaiming full control, while Kyiv insists the retreat is strategic. In the Donbas region, artillery exchanges and drone strikes continue. Intelligence reports suggest Russia is repositioning new forces for a potential new offensive. US President Donald Trump describes Putin's response as welcome but incomplete, acknowledging a willingness to negotiate, but also noting that Russia's demand may be difficult to meet. Ukrainian President Zelensky, however, dismissed Putin's stance as manipulative, arguing that the Kremlin's conditions were designed to impose unacceptable terms on Ukraine. Meanwhile, Alexander Vindman, a former U.S. National Security Council member, suggested that Putin's nuanced response was a strategic move. Putin is avoiding a direct rejection of the ceasefire proposal while minimizing potential repercussions such as increased U.S. sanctions or military support to Ukraine, he said. This highlights the complexities of ceasefire negotiations with deep disagreement over territorial sovereignty, military alliances, and foreign aid. With diplomacy in motion, military maneuvers ongoing, and geopolitical tensions at the peak, the coming week will be critical in determining the war's trajectory. Three possible scenarios could unfold: a successful diplomacy where Russia and Ukraine engage in serious negotiations leading to a framework for long-term peace; a temporary truce where the ceasefire holds but collapse due to renewed military clashes; or a renewed conflict where Russia rejects the ceasefire, prompting Ukraine and its allies to escalate their response. As the world watches, the crucial question remains: will this ceasefire hold? If it does, will it mark the beginning of a lasting peace? Or it will be just a brief pause in a war that has been ongoing for 3 years? Ephraim Agbo, reporting for Puff TV.
People of the Fountain.